Hey guys, welcome back to the Book Haven with Rachel and Raven. We're so glad you're here. Grab something yummy to drink and let's get this episode started. Today we're going to talk about what books we would take with us if we were dropped on a deserted island. So I have about 5 books that I would bring. So my first one is Emma by Jane Austen, because I feel like you have to take a classic. Like, that's just a requirement. But I love Emma. I think it's so entertaining. It's definitely my favorite Jane Austen. Not that I have sadly read them all, but I'm working on it.
We're getting there.
Emma to me is just, I love all of the kooky characters. The dad is by far the best dad in any of her books that I have read. He is so hysterical. Okay, so then my next book would be Christie by Catherine Marshall. I don't know if it's considered a classic because I don't know exactly when it was written. It's an older book, but probably not that old. But I love that story. If you haven't read it, it is about a teacher who goes and works in a very rural setting. And what time period would you say that that's in? I'm trying to remember.
Probably like late 1800s.
Okay. Definitely, like, there's not a whole lot of electricity stuff going on, and they're up in the hills, and it's just really her journey of learning about how some people live compared to her. And I think that it was, I wouldn't call it a Christian novel, but there's definitely some Christian elements to it.
Yeah.
It's definitely just a very, very good moving story of this girl turning into a woman, figuring out her place in the world. Okay, and so then my next book would be Things We Cannot Say by Kelly Reamer. If you do not know who Kelly Reamer is, you need to go look up her books. Her historical fiction books are amazing. You really can't go wrong. But this one in particular is special to me because it follows a woman kind of reliving the journey and finding out about her grandmother, her experience during World War II. But in that, her grandma is also like at the end of her life. And I lost my grandmother a few years ago. And so reading this was just like, it just was so near and dear to my heart because it felt so similar to what I had gone through with my grandmother at the end of her life. So then the next one I have is Beartown by Frederick Bachman. And I feel like it's so funny because this one is so kind of like way out in left field compared to all the other books that I picked. But this one is so well done. Frederick Bachman is an amazing writer. I don't always like his topic choices and whatever, but he has just a beautiful way of writing. And most of the time it's not like a super linear story. So you're even like, it's not a mystery, but it almost builds like a mystery. Like you're trying to figure out how the people got in this situation or whatever. So it keeps this element of intrigue going while you're slowly uncovering the backstory. And that one especially, the first one, I mean, the whole series is phenomenal. And that last one just came out, I think this year. So you could read it and be complete, be done with the story. Unlike those of us that started when we had to slowly wait for them to come out.
For each one to come out. Yes.
They were so worth it. But now the whole series is out. My favorite thing about that book is his use of the word bang. And it is used, it's about a hockey town. And so they use it to kind of like transition and to make you pause and think like, I don't know, it's just so well done. So well done. I do have to give the caveat of it's definitely like a PG-13, maybe even a little past that. But it's worth it just with how the story unfolds.
Yeah, it's not like just
good.
thrown in there. There's like a reason. I mean, I'm not excusing anything, but it makes sense why it's in the story.
It doesn't feel like the things that he added were added in just kind of like I need to make sure and I have this kind of situation or whatever. It all feels very real and very like what a lot of people are going through and dealing with. Okay, so then the last book I would take is Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Sepetys, another author who I love. And it's Between Shades of Grey, not 50 Shades of Grey.
Not to be confused.
Yes, very important distinction. But Ruta Sepetys is another one who is an amazing historical fiction writer. Most of her books, I think, are considered young adult. And I think it's only young adult because she just doesn't have any, like, it's PG. I think that's the only reason why it's generally considered that, wouldn't you say? Because it's not that the writing is, I feel like, young. I guess most of the characters are younger, but it doesn't feel so, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't want to be reading about somebody's angsty teenage, times. Between Shades of Grey, I think, was the first book I ever read by her, but it is my favorite. It is beyond.
So, fun fact, I just reread it, or I just listened to the audiobook. I'll say that. And I really enjoyed it the second time around, just as much as I enjoyed it the first time.
Shocker.
Fun fact, I like to go back and read books, but I don't remember the narrator being as annoying. The way that she talked, it didn't match the situation. And I feel like you and I talked about this, but it was like, you sound too happy about this situation. It doesn't make sense with what's happening. And like, it's a very upbeat, I don't know. It just didn't match with the situations that were happening in the book. And that kind of annoyed me.
That's interesting. I feel like a side note, which is, something that we're going to do. So if you like that, but like, here's my squirrel. I feel like so many young adult books the audiobooks are not done well because they're almost trying to make it sound juvenile. And it's just like, just have the person read it, like, we don't need you to sound annoying, like,
you don't have to dumb it down for us. We can,
exactly. Yes. So going back, her characters are so well done, and it is a part of history that is not well known. I think the average person, unless you're from the country that she's writing about, you have no idea. Like, she had Romania and then the one in Spain, and like she doesn't just particularly stay, and it's not always World War II. It's just really, really good historical fiction.
Yeah, you definitely go into a research hole after you read one of her books.
Yes. Because you're like, how did I never know this happened? Okay, so before we switch to what books Raven would take, I want to ask a bookish question. So my bookish question this week is, since we're talking about going to a deserted island, what place would you go to that you've read about in a story, if you could go there and visit in real life?
Definitely somewhere, England, the Lake District over there.
What books are you pulling that from?
I don't know. Like
what books make you want to go there?
Jane Austen, the Bronte sisters. And it's just so beautiful there. And I think it's so peaceful. And the countryside. That's the part that I would pick, is like the countryside.
I totally agree, but I'll let you have England, which is a very large claim.
Yes,
but
it is. I know. I'm aware.
So my other option then would be, of course, is Prince Edward Island.
Yes.
And for those that don't know, that's where Anne of Green Gables takes place. Just visiting, I think, would be kind of like going back in time, being able to enjoy nature that hasn't been messed with, and seeing the coastline and all that kind of stuff, I think would just be so fun. I think in all actuality, like if somebody said, here, you can take 2 trips, I totally want the England trip. Yeah. But after we do that one, then we could go to Prince Edward Island.
Yes, but while we're in England, I feel like we should go to Scotland too, because...
Oh, well, you kind of just have to do the whole like Scotland, Ireland to me, that's kind of all.
Yes.
Like when I say England, I'm talking about all of that.
The whole thing. Yes.
The British area.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are they called the British Isles?
I don't know. This is so American.
This is terrible. We're homeschool mothers, by the way. I don't know if that should be out. We should let that out of the bag yet.
My kids love maps. No.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Geography is not on the top of my, we blob map. Let's just say that.
There you go. It's across
if you
the
don't
ocean.
know, yes, if you don't know what blob mapping is, look it up. It's across the Atlantic. At least I know what ocean,
That's good. That's good.
And I know that from reading all the World War II books.
It's true.
Across the Atlantic.
I've learned a lot of geography by reading World War II books, actually.
It's so true. So true.
Okay, so for sure I would take Jane Eyre because Jane Eyre is my favorite book. Fun fact, I read it every January. So if I was going to be there and January was going to roll around and I didn't have Jane Eyre, I don't really know what I would do because it's just become such a rhythm.
I mean, at this point, you could probably quote a lot of it to yourself.
I mean, not word for word, just because my brain doesn't work that way. I don't memorize things very well. But I could recall, obviously, parts of the story that have stuck with me. So yeah, so Jane Eyre would definitely be the number one book that I would take. And then the next one I would take is Warsaw Orphan by Kelly Reamer. I just loved that book. I read it over a summer when my husband was working in Corpus, and we were like in a camper, and every afternoon I made the kids like sit for an hour and a half or 2 hours just so I could read her book.
Nice.
Like I didn't read it to them. Like they read their own books and I retired to my little cave. And if anybody knows anything about the Warsaw Ghetto, then you do know.
I mean, it's kind of like not spoilery.
I love Kelly Reamer's books. She does such a fantastic job with character development and like making you feel like. One of the main things I remember in Warsaw Orphan is that I felt like I was there. I felt like I could smell the smells. I mean, that's how well she painted that picture for me.
Yeah.
And the next one was Gentleman in Moscow. That one is a little bit like it starts off really slow, but there are a lot of things happening in that book. It's placed in a historical period in Russia, and it's about this guy who is placed under arrest, and he is in this hotel, but it's like a fancy hotel, and just how he deals with his circumstances and the way he interacts with people. It was just really beautiful. It's one that I would read again. There was no pushed agenda. It was just a very beautiful, I don't know how to describe it other than it was just really, really beautiful. Okay, and then the number 4, I would bring Beartown as well, but I would feel like I need to bring the whole series. I loved the first book, but I'm going to take a 3-for-1 deal on this one and bring the whole series.
You can bring the one where they've I haven't even seen if they've actually done it, but where it looks like, 1,000 pages, because those books are not short.
They're not short, and his character development in those books are, again, like you feel like you know the people. And when I pass that book in a bookstore, I'm like, oh, there's some of my friends.
It's like seeing a picture of people you used to know.
Yes, I'm like, oh, I was there with you when that heart thing happened, and
Yeah.
And then you're also with some of the characters, you're like, you're a jerk face, and I want to punch you in the face.
I will say too that he does such a good job with because I like it when characters have some redemption. I feel like a lot of times I don't like at the end of the day, I don't really like a book if there wasn't some sort of like redeeming aspect. Not for everybody, but there were characters in that book that don't get redeemed, but it was still so well done that I still like it just seemed very real life. You know, like not everybody's going to have some sort of redemption story, sadly. So it just felt very, I don't know, it just feels very real. So again, plug for Beartown.
We love Beartown. Okay, and my last one, because I felt like I needed to choose a funny one that was a little bit less. I mean, I say it's funny. It is funny. It's got hard elements to it, but is The Help. And I just, when I read that book, I hear all of the Southern accents, and I'm like in that time frame, living that right alongside of all of the characters. And if you have only watched the movie, like some people on this podcast, but anyways, like good character development, good, like you feel like you know these people. I love how the author presented that piece of history, but also with some, you know, comedy in there too.
Okay, so thank you so much for making it through this whole thing. Yay. With the two of us. So, and we're so excited to bring you our inner conversations. They're wacky and ridiculous most of the time, but we really do like to talk about books. And we both homeschool, so there will be, you know, some family books, some books that we've done with our kids that we've really liked, and books that we haven't really liked. So all of that's to come. But we're super excited to share with everyone just our ramblings that we've been talking about doing for so many years.
Yes.
And are now finally taking the leap of faith. So now that we're at the end of our time together, I don't know if I can say that
like a prayer. Like, what is happening?
I don't think I can say that seriously. Okay,
make it your own, Rachel. Make it your own. All right, guys, now we're going to transition into talking about the books that we are currently reading. I'm reading this book by Shelby Van Pelt, and it's called Remarkably Bright Creatures. I don't really like books that have bright covers, if you know what I mean.
I mean, this is quite a cover. I'm looking at it right now.
I know. I'm a little weird like that. They just seem a little cheesy to me, but several people that I know have read this book and have said that they didn't think that they would like it, but then they gave it 5 stars and they loved it. And I will say, I am only I'm not even 20% in. It's kind of interesting. I'm kind of wondering where it's going to go. But there is an octopus.
Yes, I am reading the synopsis of this.
And you have opinions, don't you? Already. Because I said there's an octopus.
I want to read a book that it says that the octopus is the narrator.
The octopus talks, not to people, but he has thoughts. And I don't know why it's interesting. Because we also know I don't love animal books, but
I am not an animal book person either. So,
but I'm why do people love this book? People love this book. And
well, you can figure it out and then let me know, because this does not seem like.
Well, first of all, I don't think that you will like it very much because of how many storylines there are. So let's see here. I think there's 3 storylines.
Is the octopus one of them, or is the
octopus is one of them?
Oh my goodness.
Oh no. There's more than 3 storylines, because then there's the grocer at the grocery store. So there's 4. I think there's 4. I think there's 4 storylines. So I think this is a no for you.
Yes. I would need a flow chart for that.
This is not to be put on the same level as Tale of Two Cities, but it's that. Wasn't it that one that was so many?
Oh, that one's so many. Okay, so I do love A Tale of Two Cities. It's one of my favorite Dickens. But man,
Yeah.
all of the French names too. You're like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know who's who. So I am. It's like the book that I just can't complete. And it's not because it's not good, but I have no, it's the start of the school year. I'm trying to make sure I'm getting actual school books read. So this is kind of like my side fun book that I'm never getting to, but I am promising you I'm finishing it for sure in the next couple of days because I probably only have 20 pages. Like, it's that sad.
Well, I'm on pins and needles. What is it?
Okay. So it is the third book in the Lockwood & Co. series. So it's called The Hollow Boy. So the series is very similar. I would put it in the same category as like Goosebumps. So it's young adult. I would definitely say it's young adult because it's about ghosts. So kind of like Ghostbusters, Goosebumps, that kind of genre. Very, very similar to Ghostbusters. So it's in this world and it takes place in like the 90s. But it's like this alternate universe I'm trying to remember if it's like in the 60s or 70s, ghosts start appearing. And they, if they touch you, you die. So there's like this whole thing of like, they need to stop the ghosts from running around and killing people. So, but the only people that can actually see ghosts are children. And so they have this whole thing. So it's adapted. So by the time you flash forward to like the 90s, they've had, like 30 years of training these children to go in and like knock out these ghosts so that they clear the space out. And so it's very interesting. It's written by Jonathan Stroud, I think is how you say his name. And it's so he's so funny. And he writes characters. So the main characters are like teenagery. And they make choices that are, teenagery choices, but it's not in like an annoying, unrealistic way. So this one isn't really dark. I would say it's more like spooky. Like the way he writes, you're going through, several of these like situations with them where they're trying to get rid of a ghost. So it's like an intense situation because something's going to pop out or, like stuff like that. It's not so much like dark. It's just a very interesting world building, I think, too. So, and the caveat is, if you want to see if you like it, you could always, so Netflix did, it's really the first two books that they kind of mash into one season. They've already come out and said that they're not going to make any more, which is super annoying. But, so they do have the season on Netflix, and I think it's just called Lockwood & Co. And it's pretty faithful to the book. I mean, obviously they're not going to do everything the same, but it's pretty similar. If you like that kind of stuff, goosebumpsy, mystery-ish, but it's definitely like, I would maybe screen it before you hand it to a kid because it might be like not something that they would want to read before going to bed.
That's good to know.
Just a tad, like, ooh, So, but I've been enjoying it. And I plan to finish the whole series. I just don't know when because life. So my goal, I really wanted to read that over the summer and kind of like finish the series, and that just didn't happen. And I'm sure we'll talk about it in a future episode, but I did manage to get through all of Anne of Green Gables this summer. So that was my big, like, I ended up reading that instead. Yes. Which is totally okay.
And I think like probably 1,000% better. I'm just kidding.
Wow. The judgment. I guess I judged what you're reading, so that's fine. But this one kind of like I got sucked in with a Netflix show and it just kind of ends on this huge cliffhanger. So I really wanted to know like where this was going.
All right. Well, we've come to the end of our time together, and our hope is that you have been encouraged to read something new or to reread something old if you're like me. Mostly, we hope that you make time for reading in your life. Until next time.